That was the first thing they said to me. The first time I was contacted. In that moment, a horrendous revelation befell me. The world was not what it had always seemed. The life I'd led had been an illusion. My job, my family, my dreams, they were all deceptions. All the reassurances that my parents and then society made that there was nothing to fear, that everything would be okay, they were lies. What happened to me? What am I talking about? It all comes down to this: monsters are real, they exist. I've seen them. I don't mean people can be monsters, or the human dark side is monstrous, or society creates its own monsters. No, that's bullshit. I mean walking, and in some cases living creatures, neither man nor nature, exist, hide in the shadows, and prey upon people. When you were a kid and afraid of things under your bed or outside your window, you were right to be scared. They were there, watching, waiting. As we grew up, we just turned a blind eye, subconscious effort to remain sane, to refuse to believe that creatures prowled the night. They do. I don't expect you to believe me. Most people who visit this site write me off as a crackpot. That's fine. They couldn't understand if they tried. Their mind's own defenses and the influences that have been imposed upon them for so long won't let them believe. Better that they visit another site. For those of you who understand, who've seen what I've seen, who know what I know, you have my condolences. We're trapped between people who shout at us, think us mad, or turn their backs, and the very creatures responsible for it all. The hideous things we must face every day and every night. You're not alone. But let me back up a bit. To assure you that you're among friends, I know what you're going through. You can't look anywhere without seeing something that tears at your very soul. A grotesque walking corpse, a shambling man beast, a person you know to be dead, and some kind of spirit clinging to an unwitting person's body. They hide or stroll among us unnoticed by everyone. They pick and choose who to kill, who to spare, who to save for later, who to devour now. And we have, or had, no idea it was happening. But now, we see it all the time. And the people we see poised to become victims won't listen. They refuse to believe us, and then, there they go, off to their doom. Let me guess. Your family wonders what's wrong with you. You're agitated, freaking out. Coworkers avoid you these days. You're unstable or acting weird. Maybe you've already been fired. It's hard to keep your job when you attack a colleague. Of course, no one believed you when you explained what she really was. But when she knew, you were onto her. Perhaps you've been arrested recently for assault, disturbing the peace, or weapons charges. Not even the police believe your stories, what your victims really are, or why you attacked them. They want you in a cell or committed, where they and other things can have you within reach. Sound familiar? Then here's probably the most revealing thing that you've heard in some time. You've been right all along. You're not insane. There are others like you. You've found us. The bad part is being sane and right means that everything you've witnessed, everything you feared, is real. Monsters exist. But again, I promise you, you're not alone. Hey guys, I know, I am just another crackpot on the internet, on this whole hunter.net kind of thing, but I really want to talk to you about something. The things that I've seen, the things that some of you have seen, and, you know, the other ones that just deny what I'm talking about because obviously just a crazy guy online who's just good for entertainment. I want to talk to you about what's out there versus what's here. Because, like, I'm here all the time. I know, talking about vampires and ghosts and werewolves and sorcerers and things like that. And you think, this guy's nuts. Or, yeah, but what do we do about it? Hopefully you're on the what do we do about it side, not just kind of laughing at me and chomping down on your popcorn or using this as a chance to watch some crackpot online as, you know, you're sitting there in a Notali's parking lot or something like that. But there is as many types of us out there as there are things, and I want to point that out. Tonight, I want to talk about the most common, what we have out there. There are people who know what's going on, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Greetings, hunters. I am Voivode Mekhet, and welcome to Hunter the Reckoning, 5th edition. We are going to be going over the creeds today, the different playable classes, effectively, that you can play in a game of Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition. Now, in the old game, creeds were a lot different, and what I mean by that is, in the original Hunter the Reckoning, creeds actually gave you superpowers and things like that. You weren't exactly human. I use the term battle mage a lot when I talk about the old school Hunter the Reckoning. In 5th edition, you are more along the lines playing a human being without any special powers who has special perks for the kind of job they have or the people that they know, and it does kind of show what style of hunter you are. If anything, if you were going to compare the creeds, it would not be clans or tribes or anything like that from like vampire or werewolf. It would be closer to the vampire spectrum because you're looking at effectively predator types. What kind of hunter are you? What is your MO? So we have several that we're going to go over, and I want to go over what exactly each thing is in kind of a quick overview so that this isn't too long. I do plan on doing a more detailed overlay of each creed in their own individual video where we'll go over all the little special ins and outs that they have. But I do have to say that Hunter the Reckoning as an introduction to the world of darkness is a very, very good tool. If you want to run vampire, if you want to run werewolf, Hunter might be a great way to introduce your taste, your way of storytelling to your group, to your people who are interested in letting you try a World of Darkness campaign. Because not only do you get a full view of what is out there from the human perspective, which is a little bit easier for players to get used to, especially if they're new to the World of Darkness, you have the ability to suss out weaknesses so that it helps you to create more ingrained, in-depth supernatural characters as you move on to other things. But let us get started in these creeds and what exactly you get when you play something like that. So, very first one, entrepreneurial. Now, this is going to be your Bruce Wayne is Batman, Tony Stark is Iron Man style of hunter. These are people who have money or just insanely inventive or have sponsors that might be able to help them with things. These are people who think of new, innovative ways to hunt. Now, I like to compare them to, like I said, your Bruce Waynes and your Tony Starks because it more is on the idea of how they like to hunt by putting things into perspective of somebody who thinks outside the box. The hunter that you're kind of looking at here is going to end up having some very interesting things. There are various edges, which we will end up going over in a later video, but I will tell you kind of the basics of what they are here. The suggested edges for an entrepreneurial hunter are going to be fleet, which is basically a supply of vehicles, transportation that can be modified and utilized for hunting purposes. Improvised gear. So in other words, I find this and this, put them together, kind of like your MacGyver style character, either you or someone you know. A good example of that would be like Q from James Bond, the guy who knows how to build things and put them to use for your purposes. And then, of course, one that I absolutely love, and I'm so glad has been brought into 5th edition because the process and the way that these are used can actually be kind of used in other settings too as we go on into modern nights and current events. Drone jockey, which is exactly like it sounds. I ran a hunter game where one of my players was a retired BattleBot competitor, and they used that kind of technology in hunting, which was very, very awesome. As you can see, these edges are not superpowers. They are heightened, specialized knowledges and access to things that you have. Now, we will get into all of the edges as we go over this in a very quick, brief description. There are a couple that do kind of sound supernatural in a way, but we will go over that when we get to it. Now, hunters also have drives. This is what makes them want to hunt, what actually has them going out there. And the common drives for an entrepreneurial are going to be curiosity, greed, and envy, which are great ideas. These are, by all means, much like the suggested edges, suggestions. They have a list of drives in this, which kind of work in the same way as ambitions and things like that for supernatural characters. Now, hunters do also have ambitions, but this is the driving force, what makes the person continue fighting while they're going through all these stressful events. Curiosity is obvious. What that means is basically you want to know how things work. You are curious on how monsters have survived all this time and not really been caught by the greater world. Greed is you want something from them for personal reasons. Maybe the idea of if I capture a werewolf, I'll be rich and famous kind of thing. You know, the Bigfoot hunter who is out there for his own purposes, for his own monetary growth, that kind of thing. And then envy. I love envy. Envy is such a drive that you would not think of a lot of the time for hunter, but envy could be, you know that these monsters have influence, you know that these monsters have power, and you want some of that for yourself. This can actually cause a lot of clashing in cells, which are groups of hunters, and I love it. That it's just absolutely fun. Now, another thing that hunters have, and again, we are going to go full on into the details of what this actually means as we go in another video, but that all hunters have a thing called a desperation field. This is when you get to utilize your desperation dice. I have come to affectionately call these anxiety dice. And it's basically when you get to add those dice to your roll. Because in Vampire the Masquerade, when you're playing a vampire, as your character gets hungrier and hungrier, the more blood that you use to fuel your disciplines, to heal yourself, to even wake up at night, it ends up adding hunger dice to your track, which you take away a regular die and you add a hunger die, replacing your regular die, which can lead to situations involving the beast and things like that. It's really fun the way that they worked frenzy into the system. In Werewolf, it works effectively the same way. As your rage builds as a werewolf, you remove regular dice and you put rage dice in, which can lead to compromising situations as your incontrollable anger takes over. The angrier and angrier you get as you get filled with rage. Hunter, on the other hand, has a very interesting mechanic. And again, full detail, full disclosure, we'll go over it later, but the gist is I want you to think of the stories that we used to hear when we were little about how, like, oh God, a child got, backed over by a car. Very sad, but they survived, and the mother lifted the car. This 110-pound sopping wet mother was able to lift a whole car and save her child. Or people who do miraculous things because of anxiety, because of desperation. That's how this works. Instead of replacing a dice, as things go, you add the dice. So a hunter who has a dice pool of 6 has a potential to have a dice pool of 11 in highly desperate situations. It's very, very cool. But, and I want to stress this, but it only happens in their desperation dice field. Situations where their characters shine above all ever. And with the entrepreneurial hunter, what we're looking at is when you are building, inventing, augmenting, or repairing while on a hunt. So when situations are dire, when you need something now, you get to add those dice. Now, I'll go over the details on that later, but it does become a mass pool of who gets to take what when. And as your desperation in the story goes up, you get more and more dice, which gives you both amazing, unbelievable results in your tests, given your personal desperation dice field, but can also lead to bad occurrences, such as overreaching or getting caught by your supernatural quarry. But the desperation dice field, sorry for going on a long tangent there, your desperation dice field for your entrepreneurial hunter is, like I said, building, inventing, augmenting, and repairing things while actively on a hunt. Great characters, useful in all kinds of situations. Next, we have our faithful hunters. Now, in old Hunter the Reckoning, this creed did exist back then, but it was, again, more of like a paladin who had access to divine retribution and power. This is more just what your character believes in, how they hunt, not what they get from it. So the suggested edges for a faithful are going to be library, which is an absolutely underrated edge. Being able to find the information, to utilize the information by looking through inherited books, possibly passed down from a hunter lineage or inherited from maybe you used to work for the Society of St. Leopold or something, and you were able to swipe a couple of books or something on your way out. Either way, information is golden and one of the most important things in a Hunter the Reckoning setting. The other edge that they do suggest is any of the endowments. Now, endowments, again, we're going to go into these later in greater detail, but this is the closest thing to what a hunter might have as a supernatural ability. They don't really do the most of things. They can be life-changing, life-saving even. And a lot of it just results into a supernatural awareness or the ability to use your faith to force them away. It is probably one of the best ways to utilize the concept of true faith in a World of Darkness 5th edition game. So these guys have access to that kind of thing. Maybe you were a priest or a rabbi or somebody who was in training or just somebody who truly has a heartfelt belief in some higher power, and that faith is enough to help you out of situations. I find a faithful hunter to be a wonderful mascot for most hunter cells, because that little bit of faith really does push a story into a very interesting situation. Common drives for a faithful hunter are going to be oath. Your character has made a promise. You are going to fulfill that promise. Atonement. Your character has done something wrong in the past, or at least you feel you have. Perhaps you let someone down, or someone in the past that you hunted with got caught, and now you're hunting them down, and it is up to you to put them out of their misery because they're now a vampire or a wraith that haunts an area, and you need to atone for your past mistakes. And then vengeance, the vengeful hunter, someone who is out there with the fury of God on their side. It's a very fun way to play a character, and it also stops you from playing the pacifist religious hunter. So I think it does add a lot to the game in storytelling. Desperation fields for the faithful are pretty much, I love this, any direct conflict, physical, social, or mental, with a supernatural while on the hunt, which means anytime that you are directly working against face to face with a supernatural entity, you are going to get augmented. You can be physically combating them. You could be in a social trying to convince them that you're not dangerous. Or you could be trying to figure out what they're trying to do while in direct, like, communication with them or being manipulated by them. The faithful have probably, I would say the faithful and the martial hunters have probably some of the most useful desperation dice fields in Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition. Then we could move on to the Inquisitive. I personally love the Inquisitive. If I was going to put a stereotypical Inquisitive archetype, I would say Sam Winchester from Supernatural, the one who's always looking through the books, attempting. You know what? Let's do Supernatural. Let's do that. Entrepreneurial. Who's a good entrepreneurial hunter in Supernatural? I think that might very well be the worst example. You know what? Hunter Inc. Towards the last season, they showed the multiverse of Supernatural where Sam and Dean met the alternate versions of themselves. Hunter Inc. is great for it. It was a great joke, but it is quite a entrepreneurial setting. Faithful. I'm going to go ahead and say Castiel would make a wonderful faithful hunter. I understand he's not human, but he was in fact that way. Then we have Inquisitive Sam, like I said, and the suggested edges for the Inquisitive hunter is library, again, because they study. They are going to gather your information. They're going to distribute the information amongst the cell, which is a group of hunters, and they are going to find out what they need to do to take out their quarry. Global access, effectively knowing how to properly utilize the internet for your own purposes. It really does help, and the way that edge works is a nice, smooth basis for how you could use that in other games as well. Beast Whisperer. This is not animalism. This is not the ability to supernaturally discuss, control, communicate with animals. It is literally the ability to train an animal and to utilize them for your purposes in this game. And then, of course, Sense the Unnatural, which is one of the endowments, which basically just means that you know how to, or you have the natural innate ability to know that there is something not quite right in the area. Again, these are all suggestions. You do not have to take these. Any of these guys can take any of the edges, and they work out wonderfully. Common drives for the inquisitive hunter are going to be curiosity, which makes a lot of sense. Perhaps you found something out that you should not know, and now you just want to know more. What you can utilize, you want to study them. Pride. Uh, Perhaps it's in yourself, perhaps it's in the human race, but something in you makes you just go, we are better than this, and we can handle this situation. And then greed. I love greed as a drive for pretty much any hunter because it kind of pushes the boundary of we're not just playing the good guys here. This is more complicated than that. And the fact that this leads to a story that's not quite black and white is always amazing. Speaking of not quite black and white, the desperation dice fields of the inquisitive hunter. Gaining information while on the hunt, such as research, breaking and entering, or interrogation. So we're not looking at people who just have to be stuck in a library all the time, not doing anything active. Their desperation dice field literally goes to any way you can possibly think of for information gathering. And I absolutely love that that is a part of this game. Marshall. Dean Winchester. If we're going with the supernatural metaphor, Dean Winchester is the absolute best representation of a marshal. If you want to go into other aspects, I understand he's not exactly human, but Blade from the Marvel Universe also would be considered a marshal. And then Whistler, the guy who works with him, would be considered entrepreneurial because he's the one who makes the stuff and helps to facilitate. So the suggested edges for a martial hunter are going to be your arsenal. Think that's pretty self-explanatory. Weapons. You either have weapons or you know how to get weapons. You know somebody who knows how to get weapons. Fleet. Again, vehicles. A way to get from point A to point B on a hunt is always useful. Ordnance. As a storyteller, for a quarter of a century at this point, ordnance is something that, as long as I've been playing, has been a nightmare to storytell for because it was always marked down under an ability. And those of you who are older storytellers or even modern, I don't really know. I have not had this come up as often in modern gameplay, except for some of my older players who want to know about the demolition's ability, which, might I add, has been completely removed from the abilities list and from the books. It's just not there. That's what ordnance is. It is a character who understands how to get and utilize explosives. And this can just be a lot of fun. And it is exactly what you might think. And then also, the last suggested edge for this is artifact. This kind of fits into the endowment section, but what it basically is, it's not a supernatural power that your character has, not a sense or an ability. It's more of, I have a thing. I have an item that I've found or picked up or perhaps stole from a supernatural in a previous hunt or something like that. Good examples of this, again, I'm using supernatural as the example, would be the rabbit's foot from the episode that was the rabbit's foot. Or pretty much any other supernatural enchanted item of some fashion. Perhaps you have a fang from a vampire who was a serial diablerist that when you hold it up on a string, it it like douses towards the closest vampire because the tooth still craves blood. Or perhaps you have a holy silver cross from an inquisitioner that has the ability to cause aggravated damage even if you don't have the faith just by touching it to the flesh of a vampire. This is just off the top of my head. There are rules for how these artifacts work, but effectively what it is you own an item that has some supernatural value that will help you on a hunt. Common drives for a martial hunter are going to be vengeance, obviously. You're out for revenge. Perhaps you lost friends or family members, someone close to you, and you are out for blood due for that. Pride. Pride is a scary drive, but it can push stories in a very interesting direction. This is the kind of thing where not all hunters are going to get along, even if they are forced to work in the same cell together. And then envy. You are jealous of the power that these supernatural entities have, and if you can't have it, neither can they. I love darker drives when it comes to this. I do like to see a good story where everybody does have the right intentions at the beginning, but things don't always stay black and white in the world of darkness. And then, of course, our desperation dice fields for a martial hunter are physical conflicts while on the hunt, which need not be with the quarry itself or even supernatural in nature. So, in other words, if you're on a hunt actively and someone gets in the way, even if they're just a bystander or someone who's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you get your desperation dice in that situation if you get into a physical conflict with them. It's an interesting situation, but as the pressure builds, so does your stress. And as your stress builds, the desperation will get the better of you. And the next thing you know, you have extra dice to throw in any physical confrontation while you are actively hunting. Next, Underground. The character that I would most likely associate with this, if we were looking at Supernatural, is going to be Bobby. Bobby is the guy who knows people. He is the guy who socially knows how to maneuver and get into places. This is what an underground is for. Now, the suggested edges for an underground are going to be arsenal. They have weapons, or they know how to get weapons. It makes a lot of sense. Perhaps you, as an underground, are the weapons distributor for your cell. Fleet. You got cars. Maybe you've decided to collect them, or maybe you know a valet or something like that, and you're able to steal cars every once in a while. But you have cars that can be modified and utilized in the hunt. Improvised gear is a suggested edge as well, which is, again, you can make things from stuff on the spot, and it's helpful. And then thwart the unnatural is marked down as a suggested edge. That's another one of those endowments, which basically means that you have the ability to stop supernatural powers from happening just by your mere presence. They're not as sick and powerful as they sound, but that is for a later discussion. The common drives of an underground are envy. You are jealous of these individuals who have possibly more influence than you do. That can't go. That can't stand. And you need to do something to fix it. Oath. You've made a promise. You need to fulfill it. For some reason, supernaturals are wrapped up in it. You are going to take things out because you need to fulfill that oath. Vengeance. Vengeance works for pretty much every hunter. Just going to go ahead and say. That basically means that something happened to you in the past or somebody that you care about, and you're not done until you take out what caused it and possibly anything else that's like that. Desperation dice field for an underground hunter are going to be for stealth or subterfuge in service of the hunt. So in other words, whenever you interact with anybody while trying to gain information, or if you're sneaking around in an area, trying to maybe map out the location of a quarry or something like that, that gives you those extra dice in those situations. Underground hunters, in my opinion, are overlooked massively, both in and out of game. And the reason I say that is because I find that a lot of people don't want to play the underground, even though they are the rulers of the social game in Hunter the Reckoning. They're the guy who knows the guy who knows the guy who knows the monster. And utilizing them is definitely massively helpful. In game, I find that they're underutilized because a lot of people in game, a lot of characters, don't think that they do as much when really they're the first ones on the line. They're the ones who are gaining the information. Even if they don't necessarily go out on the hunt themselves, they're the ones who have interrogated the ghoul, made friends with the kinfolk, investigate the grieving widow of the wraith that's terrorizing some nightclub somewhere. Like they are vital to the hunt if you want to get anywhere. And yeah, that is it. So what we're looking at again, I wanna go over that. We've got our entrepreneurial, our faithful, our inquisitive, our martial, and our underground. Those guys are the hunters. Now, there are definitely options for other types of creeds. I'm sure in future installments of Hunter the Reckoning, if they're not already out in other books, we will see other creeds at some point in time. Reasons why people hunt cannot fully be described in those 5 characteristics. I remember in the original Hunter the Reckoning, after a while, they introduced the Wayward, which were effectively the hunters that could not be controlled. They almost acted as an anti-hero or an antagonist towards the other creeds because they were just completely unhinged. So I do think, and I could very well be wrong, but I personally think, as we see future installments of Hunter the Reckoning games, we'll most likely see other creeds, possibly even other edges, which would be an awesome thing to see. So I hope that this helps you to narrow down what type of hunter you might want to play in a 5th edition Hunter the Reckoning game. I've personally run a few of these, and they have always just been a refreshing departure from the I need to go out and find blood, or I need to go destroy this massive building built by Pentex or something like that. Playing Hunter in the World of Darkness is definitely a step outside the norm for most players. But it's such a great setting, and like I said originally, a wonderful introduction into the World of Darkness for people who are not used to playing the monster in the setting. If you say that this video was helpful, I would greatly appreciate a like, possibly a share to anybody who might also be interested in Hunter the Reckoning content, and of course, if you are not subscribed to this channel or any of the other Our World of Darkness, Voivode, Mekhet channels, please hit that subscribe for regular uploads of this type of content. If you are interested in having Voivode Mekhet as your storyteller for Vampire the Masquerade, Hunter the Reckoning, or Werewolf the Apocalypse, consider checking out our Patreon. Link is in the description, and there is a general thank you for making these videos contribution that we have set up for $1. And then if you are interested in the denizens of Our World of Darkness, which makes you an active player in my overarching storylines for Thicker Than Water, or possibly even creating a custom chronicle specifically for you and your friends, just a consideration. With that, I am Voivode Mekhet. This has been a view on the creeds for Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Stay safe out there. It's darker than you think.